Buenos dias, bonjour, o genki desu ka, ni hao ma, guten tag, dobre utro, god morgen, and good day. Secret societies, the roots of control. The control and suppression seen today can be traced back to esoteric, secret, mystical orders. Esoteric religion is the history of magic, magic with a K, and the very roots of the operation of secret societies around the world today. Esoteric can be likened to the occult, which simply means that it is beyond the perception of most of the population. As the mystical experiences of life were codified into religious canons based on idolatry and false worship, a seal was tightened on the freedom of mind of the average individual. Conformity was preached, and heretics were either beheaded or burned at the stake. It became obvious after the feudal ages that there was a power behind the king, and this power has kept many secrets. Although most secret societies which have ever operated during the post-diluvian times are not demonic, do not worship Lucifer, and are not part of a reptilian bloodlines and the New World Order, they all share a common trait in that something is kept secret amongst the group. In this section, we're going to learn about orthodox religions. Not in its entirety, however, but the secret mystical orders that lay behind these orthodox religions, but also politics as well. The hidden hand that moves amongst us. The secrets are kept so power can be bestowed upon only the chosen few. But today that power is disintegrating as real knowledge is being leaked out from the dark corners. Our discussion of secret societies begins with esoteric religion and philosophy. After Sumer and Babylon, the Brotherhood of the Snake, Babylonian Brotherhood, Zoroastrianism was the first monotheistic religion, the predecessor to the Judeo-Christian and Islamic tradition, the religions of the book, so to speak. Contemporaneous to the height of the Egyptian Empire, Zoroastrianism borrowed such concepts as belief in one God, heaven and hell, the resurrection of the dead, the final judgment, and the victory of good over evil in the end times. Zarathustra, who lived possibly as early as 1000 BC, declared Ahura Mazda, the one true God, and that all the other Egyptian, Persian, and Greek gods were just servants of the real God. Most Zoroastrians today are known as Parsis, or Persians, especially in India. Mithra was the Persian god of contracts and was associated with the sun, like many of the other gods. From the 2nd century to the 5th century Common Era, Mithraism was the popular religion in Rome and was held as a religion for men only. Its precursor, Zoroastrianism, identifying with men and women equally. As Mithras was a savior god, the elements of Jesus and Christianity bear a striking resemblance to Mithraism, a practice much more common in the Holy Roman Empire than was Christianity during the early centuries of the New Era. There were 7 levels of initiation, with the initiated and the practitioners of the ritual meeting in secret to perform such duties. This harkens back to Egypt and initiation in the Great Pyramid. It has been reported that these secret rituals involved the initiated making his way through a dark passage until he came across a light, a metaphor for death and resurrection. The most important goal of initiation is self-realization, and Mithraism fits this perfectly. Among other titles, Mithraism was in fact a religio-magical cult, that it kept secret spiritual and magical knowledge and revealed it only to initiates. More and more knowledge being emitted the higher they climbed the ladder. Other mystery religions before and after Christ were based on the gods Dionysus, Isis, Osiris, Cybele, Attis, Demeter, Persephone, and Orpheus. The movement commemorating the god Orpheus taught that there is a spark of God, the eternal creator, in each and every person. The rituals in the highest degrees of modern Freemasonry today draw precise parallels to these ancient rites of passage to higher levels in the Kabbalah. Tex Mars, renowned Christian occult researcher, details quite vividly in his books the extent to which Masonic hand signs and handshakes resemble an ancient Babylonian and Egyptian rites of passage. In Codex Magica, one can find more than enough pictures and magazine book scans portraying these hand signs and what they really mean. It is quite evident from Mars research that religious, political, and military leaders, as well as famous musicians and actors, employ these symbols on a regular basis, most likely demonstrating their allegiance to secret societies and the false god Lucifer. In Mysterious Monuments, Mars describes how monuments erected today embody the concepts preached in the mystery schools. It is not only Hollywood and hand signs, but also satanic monuments that act as subliminal messages to our collective unconscious. In fact, our subconscious mind is very powerful and perceives everything. Peggy Kane is a UFO researcher who is an expert in electronic voice phenomena, EVP, and reverse speaking, RS. According to the reverse speaking theory, when humans speak, their vocal cords simultaneously emit a backwards speech that sheds light on the true nature of the inner thoughts and emotions of the person speaking. This backwards tonal frequency is emitted from the subconscious at the same time the conscious mind speaks in forward language. Pythagoras, the mathematician living during the 5th century BCE, was also a religious, spiritual philosopher. In 530 before Common Era, Pythagoras set up a school in the Greek city of Croton, where he taught the relationship of numbers to the universe. He explained to his students that the universe is a constant vibration, a state which produces the music of the spheres, or in other words, the sounds the planetary bodies make when they rotate on their axis, 7th dimensional harmonics. He taught in reincarnation and the connection between the microcosm and the macrocosm. He also taught in the purity of body, mind, spirit. Members of his school were obliged to follow the ascetic way of life, meditating every day and abstaining from sex and eating meat. As Pythagoras and his followers construed the rational element in life, they subsequently identified that a vast irrational element existed as well. Life can only be explained in rational terms up to a certain point. At this point, the imagination must be invoked. Contemporary to Pythagoras were the philosophers Heraclitus from Greece and Lao Tzu from China, both attempting to explain the irrational element of life. According to Heraclitus, one cannot step into the same stream twice because it is constantly changing. This recurrent evolution marks the path to full comprehension. Everything is constantly evolving to a higher state of consciousness. Today, these teachings would either be deemed occult, which means hidden, or esoteric, which means recondite. Other figures in different parts of the world were coming to similar conclusions. In Nepal, Prince Siddhartha was born into a royal family, never tasting the experience of rags, poverty, or illness until he one day came across 4 sights: an ascetic, a sick person, an old man, and a corpse. Realizing that people suffered no matter where they were in the caste system, Siddhartha sat under a bohi tree one day and vowed to remain unmoved until he understood the meaning of life. After 3 days, he understood. He apprehended that life is suffering and that this suffering stems from attachment for material things. Freedom from this desire can be attained by following the Eightfold Path. Siddhartha became the Buddha and released this knowledge to his people. The Eightfold Path is the path to enlightenment and involves right belief, conviction, right teaching, right action, right living, right intention, right thinking, and right contemplation. The followers of Buddha devised their own methods for initiation and understood the mystical or irrational element to life. Plato, one of the most influential Greek philosophers, was another prominent figure in the epoch, following Pythagoras, Siddhartha, and Lao Tzu. His teachings derive from Pythagoras. Neoplatonism is a movement started by Plato in the 4th century BCE that receded with the later Greek philosophers of the 6th century CE. Many of Christianity's founding fathers were well studied in Neoplatonist thought. as a few at the time were not. There is no one set of Neoplatonist ideas, so it's useful to apprehend the knowledge taught by its advocates. Plotinus taught virtue and chastity and was utterly opposed to magic. His student Porphyry thought practical ways for the soul to move to higher levels of consciousness and was much more in favor of white magic. His pupil, in turn, Lamblichus, stressed the practice of mystical philosophy, employing numerous types of magical rituals and ceremonies aimed at invoking kindly spirits. The impact that Neoplatonism, especially the kind taught by Lamblichus, had on esoteric religion and secret societies cannot be underestimated. Lamblichus taught the hierarchy of spiritual beings, which did very well in explaining the relationship of the one true God to the lesser deities. The dichotomy of monotheism and polytheism was thus explained away. There is only one infinite creator, and every other soul is a lesser deity. Those souls who are more evolved can appear as gods when they really aren't. It is also important to note here how Hermetic philosophers and alchemists, constituents of the earlier esoteric traditions, used to call down daemons and rituals and offer sacrifices to them. They rarely attempted to call down demons, the modern translation of daemon. This was known to be very dangerous and is known today as selling your soul to the devil. The ceremonies of the Hermetic order took on the aspects of the Neoplatonist thought that there is one true God and every other soul is a lesser deity. Those souls who were spiritually evolved were evoked and made an offer. People today who worship the devil or Satan are offering sacrifices to a dark spirit in exchange of money, sex, and power. The more people in on the ritual and the sacrifice, the more powerful it becomes. That is why in secret Illuminati rituals today, a victim is always sacrificed amidst a crowd of silent but eager spectators. The evil spirits, most likely reptilian entities, feed off the fear and negative energy, and they grant the worshipers some sort of knowledge or power. Esoteric Christianity employs these concepts today. However, the teachings have been distorted for centuries. The Vatican and other related organizations have practiced devil worship, blood sacrifice, and pedophilia and black magic for centuries. And they maintain a veil of secrecy over esoteric philosophy. When mystical Christianity split from Rome, it moved to Constantinople, which was a better fit due to its nature of being a melting pot for cultures and ideologies. Saint Maximus came from this area and taught that the ultimate aim of the worshiper was to become God. This position unified the Neoplatonist desire for ecstatic communion with purity and the early mystical Christian belief that full initiation made the devotee a Christos. Such beliefs lay at the core of esoteric Christianity, a fact greatly misunderstood considering the church's monopoly on salvation. The Egyptian pantheon and its connection to other pantheons has already been touched upon, but it is of greater interest to me now to speak of the origins of alchemy, which may very well lay in ancient Egypt. The English word alchemy derives from the Arabic word alchemia, itself coming from the Greek chemia and the Egyptian chem. The earliest Egyptian alchemists were also chemists, and they knew how to combine different types of powders and chemicals together. They also had the ability to refine gold, one of the most precious metals. Gold was reserved for royalty, and the priests who guarded this secret were early metal workers and chemists. The Hebrew are a good example of this. It should be of no surprise to the reader by now how gold was important in the workings of the early human civilizations on Earth. Thus, the linkage was bonded between magic, scientific knowledge, and religion. Today, the three are enemies of each other, but back then they were all different expressions of the same thing. Just as the Egyptians influenced the early Christians, they also stamped a heavy impact on the Greeks. A man who sought the unification of magic and science was Hermes Trismegistus. It is impossible to say who Hermes Trismegistus actually was in real life. However, we know what his name means: thrice greatest. If Hermes Trismegistus was indeed three people who placed their teachings together, then that would make sense. But it does not matter much, as the teachings have been passed on for centuries. Hermes is most notably identified with Mercury, the Roman messenger god, and Thoth, the Egyptian god of writing. When you add the fact that Mercury is a planet and a liquid metal used in alchemy, you see a partially completed picture. Writing, alchemy, and the gods, which were sometimes depicted as the planets in the solar system, were indispensable to secret orders. Writing was important because it was the way in which records of rituals were kept, as well as knowledge were written down in books. Being able to read and write in the days of the Greeks and Romans was no small feat. So to be in a secret society back then, it would most certainly help one be able to perform these tasks. Thoth was not only the god of writing and record keeping, but also the god who instituted the calendar and the methods by which movements of the planets around the sun could be measured. These methodologies are extremely important today. Everyone is bound to the calendar, night and day, and the cycles of months and years. Everyone's personal schedule revolves around these compartmentalized procedures. The Hermetic texts have inspired the 16th century alchemists and Hermetic philosophers who are of great significance to the perpetration of the esoteric teachings. Modern day science can lay claim to beginnings in the Hermetic order. Hermes' famous dictum was, "As above, so below," which has come to mean the unity of all. The bridge between the microcosm and the macrocosm can be summed up nicely in the Emerald Tablet, the refined wisdom of the much longer Corpus Hermeticum. Tune in, and we will get to that which lies within the Emerald Tablet and the Corpus Hermeticum. Stay tuned. Namaste. Namaskaram.